Imagine you've just been in a car accident. Your car is damaged, you're shaken up, and now you have to call your insurance company. For many drivers, that might be the most stressful part. We actually ran a survey of 1,000 Americans, and nearly half of them said that their biggest fear is that their insurance company will try to avoid paying the claim. And even more striking, from our survey, we found that 69% of people believe insurance companies see them as a policy number rather than actual people. So we wanted to find out something interesting. Which car insurance company do drivers actually expect to be the most compassionate after an accident? Hey guys, my name is Gabriella Covey, and if we haven't met before, welcome to Data Dorks TV, where we dig into survey data, rankings, and public opinion to figure out what people really think, especially when the results turn out to be a little surprising. In this case, it definitely surprised us. When we asked that question to 1,000 Americans, the company that actually came out on top as the most compassionate is not the one you most expect. It wasn't State Farm, wasn't Allstate, it was, wait for it, Geico. Yes, Geico. Ahead of State Farm, ahead of Farmers, ahead of Allstate and Progressive. So let's walk together through the ranking and then look at the rest of the survey and see what it reveals about how Americans really feel about their insurers when things go, well, wrong. First off, here is the top 10 from the survey. Number 1, Geico. Then State Farm, Farmers Insurance, Allstate, and Progressive. Rounding out the list, Shelter Insurance, American Family Insurance, Erie Insurance, Nationwide, and AAA Insurance. At first glance, this list feels, well, a little surprising, right? Because if you ask people which insurer feels the most emotionally supportive, Geico probably wouldn't be the most obvious answer. It's usually associated with price comparisons, quick quotes, and that gecko. But that's exactly what makes this result interesting. Because the survey isn't measuring which insurer actually has the best claims department. It's measuring who people expect would show compassion in a very stressful moment. An expectation is shaped by branding, familiarity, and emotional tone, not just real-world service. So let's start with Geico. Geico finishing first is the big twist in this survey, but once you think about it, really, it makes a lot of sense. Geico, as we all know, it's one of the most recognizable insurance brands in the country. People see the ads constantly. I know I do. They know the gecko, they know the name, and in stressful situations, familiarity sometimes, well, that feels like safety. So if a brand feels familiar, people naturally assume it will be more reachable, capable, and easier to deal with when something goes awfully wrong, like getting in a car accident. Geico also has a very approachable brand tone. There's the humor, the advertising style, and the personality of the brand that make it feel less intimidating than the other large insurers. So while Geico doesn't market itself primarily around compassion, it's built a brand personality that feels, well, more human than people might expect from a giant insurance company. Now, if you look at the rest of the top 5 from our results, the pattern becomes clearer. State Farm in second place is much less surprising. For decades, this company has positioned itself as the dependable neighbor, the company that, shows up when things go wrong. And that kind of messaging matters to people. After an accident, people don't just want, efficiency. They want reassurance. Farmers Insurance also performs well because its brand suggests experience. Its messaging often implies that, well, it's seen every kind of accident before, and that creates a feeling of calm competence. Allstate's placement also makes sense. You're in good hands is exactly the kind of phrase people remember when imagining a really stressful claim situation. And then there's Progressive. Progressive blends a modern efficiency-driven identity with human advertising. And it feels quick and capable, but it's still pretty approachable. It's an approachable brand. And that combination likely helps it perform well in a survey about compassion. But one of the most interesting part of the ranking might actually show up further down the list. Once you move past the big national brands that a lot of us are familiar with, you start seeing companies like Shelter Insurance and Erie Insurance. And that connects to one of the clearest findings in the entire survey. We asked respondents another question. Who do you think would treat you better after an accident? A large national insurer or a smaller regional company? And the result in the survey was pretty clear. 59% said a smaller or regional insurer. Only 41% chose a large national company. So that tells us something pretty important. Even though the big brands dominate advertising and awareness, many drivers still associate compassion with the companies that feel smaller, more local, and more personable. AAA seems to fit this pattern because AAA isn't just associated with insurance. It's associated with helping people show up when something has gone wrong on the road. And that emotional connection matters a lot in a survey about compassion. But here's where the survey got really interesting. Because the ranking is only part of the story, when we asked Americans what actually worries them about dealing with their insurance company after an accident, the answers were pretty revealing. The top concern in our survey results was this: 49% of people worry their insurer will try to avoid paying the claim altogether. Another 29% said that the claims process will be stressful, and 20% worry it will just take too long. Only 6% said reaching customer service would be their biggest concern. And that's an important detail. The main fear clearly isn't access, it's feeling like the process will become adversarial. And the next finding reinforces that. When we asked whether insurance companies see their customers as people or policy numbers, 69% of people said policy numbers. That's a massive trust gap. And yet, despite that skepticism, people still care deeply about how insurers treat them after an accident. In fact, 93% of respondents said emotional support from an insurance company is important. Nearly half said it's extremely important. And that tells us something important. So claims handling isn't just paperwork, it's a human moment. People need reassurance in these moments. We want guidance. We want to feel like someone is helping us through a stressful situation, that these companies actually care. And if that doesn't happen, the consequences can be huge. When we asked how likely drivers would be to leave their insurer after a poorly handled claim, well, 61% said very likely. Another 30% said somewhat likely. That means 91% of customers would at least consider leaving after a bad claims experience. In other words, a single bad claim can undo years of customer loyalty. So what is the key takeaway from this survey? It is not that Geico is officially the most compassionate insurer in America. That's really not what our data measured. What it shows is which companies drivers expect to treat them best during one of the most stressful moments in everyday driving life. Some feel familiar because they're everywhere. Some feel reassuring because of the language they've used for decades, that we've seen, that we've encountered. Some feel more human because they appear smaller or more local. And others, like AAA, benefit from already being associated with help arriving when something has gone wrong. But the bigger story is clear. In an industry that many consumers still distrust, the companies that win perception are the ones that feel the most human. So if you guys enjoyed this breakdown, please like, share, and subscribe to Data Dorks TV. On our channel, we will dig into the numbers behind public opinion, brand perception, and the surprising stories hiding inside survey data. And let us know in the comments. Do you guys agree with this ranking, or is there no way Geico should be number one? Or like, who do you think should be number one? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and see you guys in the next video. Bye!